Hey everybody, got another quote that I'd like to share with you guys from one of the foremost influencers in my life, author Viktor Frankl. I've talked about him before on a previous episode, a psychotherapist who survived the concentration camps at Auschwitz and others during the Holocaust, and then went on to write a book, Man's Search for Meaning. In it, he talks about some of his experiences and describes a form of therapy that he calls logotherapy for some of his patients after the war. I'll put a link to maybe a video or something that I can find up on him in the comments in the video below. I highly recommend looking up some of his work. If you don't read the book, just maybe look at the video or something like that. Extremely impactful author and ideal in my mind and in my life thus far. So here's the quote from the book, Man's Search for Meaning. For success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue, and it only does so as the unintended side effect of one's dedication to a cause greater than oneself, or as a byproduct of one's surrender to a person other than oneself. That is a lot of really deep information. I'll do my best to kind of work through that in a brief period of time. So the reason why I was thinking about this one is, I think I mentioned before in another video, I'm at a wedding right now. And one thing I've heard a couple people say, which is, it's not a bad thing, is that I hope that they're happy. And while I for certainly hope for portions of happiness in anyone's life, especially in a marriage, the recognition that happiness itself is fleeting and in and of itself is not a realistic end. So if you're just pursuing happiness, that can be achieved in any number of ways that aren't necessarily healthy. Also, it is not a permanent state of being, unless maybe you're heavily sedated to the point where you're no longer part of what we would call the world around us. So Frankl recognized this. Success and happiness don't come by chasing success and happiness. In fact, it's almost, in my experience and from what I've understood of other people, it's one of those things where the more you chase it as itself, oftentimes the harder it is to achieve that. It's a strange phenomenon that I've noticed. However, he goes on to say that as it occurs as an unintended side effect. So something that just happens. All of a sudden you wake up and you're in a happy mood. And if you really think about that, some happy moments in your life, maybe it's because you're doing something big, something scary, something meaningful. And that's, the thesis of Frankl's life of work, body of work, is that the searching for and the pursuit of meaning will ultimately bring about bouts of happiness. And I say bouts because the happiness does not last. It's also normal and expected to have periods of trial, maybe a mild depression, of challenge that, when people think about happiness, do not make up the ideals of happiness in their mind. In fact, they're quite painful, where happiness in and of itself is a state of lightness, a lack of pain, of joy. And again, he goes on to say, they only come from, as the unintended side effect, from two things. The first of which is one's dedication to a cause greater than oneself. So that means you're pursuing something that is bigger than yourself. If you're a member of the team and the team is working hard to achieve some level of success as a championship or anything like that, you're working towards something bigger than yourself. If you are working to provide for your family, to put food on the table, to build them a life better than you had, you're building and working towards something for them. If you're working as part of an organization in your job and you really want your organization to succeed, if you're a member of your church, if you are working toward in philanthropy to make the lives of people less fortunate than you better around you, that is something, a calling, if you will, that is higher than oneself. And that is one of the ways that you can find happiness and true joy in doing that work amongst periods of pain or maybe genuine sorrow. The other way to do that as a byproduct of one's surrender to a person other than oneself. I can only think of one word that really sums up that second option, and that's love. When you care more about the well-being of somebody else and you put yourself second behind that person, that is love. When I think about the love between a husband and a wife, the love between a parent and a child, or vice versa, in either of those cases, I think about how the love you submit to the love in that relationship, and oftentimes those relationships are the source of the greatest joy that you can experience. For those that have had the good fortune to find themselves in any of those relationships, you probably know what I'm talking about. So if you find yourself seeking happiness, think about maybe the futility of that effort, and maybe look to find something that's worth actually embracing the challenging portions that makes it okay. And I think happiness will just kind of land upon you as an unintended side effect, as Frankl puts it, and just as a natural consequence of the work that you're doing in your life, wherever that may be. So have a good day, and I'll talk with you guys later.